Let me describe a feeling and see if it resonates. You sit down to work on something important. Within minutes, your mind has drifted to an email you forgot to send or a conversation that you need to have, something that happened yesterday or something that might happen tomorrow. You pull yourself back and it drifts again. And by the end of the day, you know you've been busy, but you're not sure what you've actually accomplished. And underneath it all, there's this low-level exhaustion that rest just doesn't seem to fix. If that's familiar, let's talk about what's actually happening and what may help. I'm Krithika, a global sales and marketing leader and ICF certified professional coach. Welcome to Align, where we explore practical strategies to help you work with more clarity and less chaos. I've spent over a decade in big tech, including Amazon and TikTok, and years in startups, including my own. Basically, environments where there was always more work to do than hours in the day. And I've coached leaders who felt scattered, fragmented, and unable to focus despite trying really hard. What I've learned about focus is that it's rarely about discipline, but it's about working with your mind rather than against it. And let me show you what that may look like. First, it helps to understand why your brain does this. When your mind jumps from one thing to another, it's doing exactly what it's evolved to do: scan for threats and anticipate what's coming. The problem is that modern work exploits this wiring. Every notification, every message, every meeting invite tells your brain, this might be important and pay attention right now. And your brain complies. It scans and it switches and it stays vigilant. The result is constant low-grade alertness. Your mind never fully settles because it's always half monitoring for the next thing. And that's not a discipline problem. It's a fundamental design mismatch. And the fix isn't trying harder. It's working differently. The first shift is getting things out of your head and onto paper. When you have a lot on your plate and you need to plan your time, take 10 minutes and write everything down. This is what we all call a brain dump. Things like tasks, worries, ideas, things you're avoiding, conversations that you need to have. Don't organize yet, just dump and then sort. For each item, ask yourself 2 questions. Is this time sensitive? And is this important? If you're familiar with the Eisenhower matrix, this is exactly that. If it's time sensitive and important, then it needs your attention right now. If it's important but not urgent, schedule it for later and do not think about it anymore. If it's urgent but not important, delegate it or time box it strictly. And if it's neither, cross it out of your list and move it to some someday shelf of your life. This forces decisions about your attention before the day's chaos begins. And so you stop reacting to whatever's the loudest and you start choosing what matters. When you've determined what needs your attention in the immediate term, recognize that not everything on your to-do list requires the same quality or type of thinking. Some tasks require creativity, some need careful analysis, and some need your full presence, while others just need a few minutes of administrative attention. But most of us treat everything the exact same way. We jump from strategic thinking to an email, to a complex conversation, to admin and back, as if our brains can shift gears instantly. It can't. Every switch has a cost. And so this is a practice that I call mental sifting. At the start of each day, ask, what actually requires my sharpest thinking or my deepest work today? Then protect time for those before the reactive work takes over. And reactive work will always take over. Your list will change daily, but the practice will give you a sense of control that makes everything else easier. I'd mentioned earlier that context switching has a cost. Every time you shift from one type of thinking to another, part of your attention stays attached to what you were doing. Psychologists call this attention residue. The more you switch without resetting, more residue accumulates, and the harder it becomes to think clearly about anything. Most people ignore this. They move from an email to strategy work to something or the other, expecting their brain to shift instantly. But as we've just discussed, it can't. What helps is making transitions conscious rather than automatic. Before switching contexts, what I like to do is close what I was doing, literally and mentally. I take a moment to acknowledge what I'm closing, and then I move on to the next thing. Like, great, I'm done with this email. I'm going to move on to the presentation now. It takes seconds and you may feel a little bit silly doing it first, but it clears the residue. You arrive at the next thing with more of your mind space available. And so wherever I manage multiple work streams now, this single habit helps determine how clear I feel at the end of the day. So you've sorted your priorities and you're transitioning cleanly between them. The next question is, when do you do your most important work? Your capacity for focus isn't constant throughout the day. There are hours when you're sharp and hours when you're foggy, and you probably know which are which. The mistake is giving your best hours to whoever gets there first. You wake up clear-headed and you spend it, let's say, on emails. And by the time you get to the work that actually matters, in case emails don't matter, you're running on fumes. And the shift here is to identify when your mind is the sharpest and to protect that window for work that deserves it. For me right now, that's early morning. Because of the nature of my work, I don't check messages first thing, and I avoid meetings before 10 a.m. whenever possible, because that window goes to whatever requires my clearest thinking of the day. And your peak might be different. It could be late mornings, early afternoons, evenings. The practice isn't about the morning. It's about matching your most demanding work to your most capable hours. Your best thinking shouldn't get your worst energy. If there's anything you can take away, please take this. A scattered mind isn't a personal failing. It's a signal that you're working against your brain instead of with it. So decide what deserves your best thinking. Acknowledge the start and the end of tasks between contexts, and protect the hours when your mind is at its sharpest. These aren't dramatic changes, but they do compound, and over time, they're the difference between feeling fragmented and feeling focused. Until next time, this is Kritika from Align, wishing you calm amidst the chaos and alignment in all that you do.